Jerry, I always love having you on and getting to talk about the projects you're working on. And we're going to talk about your latest novel, which surrounds The Chosen. And we'll also talk about The Chosen. Now, for those who don't know, and I think most people do, your son is Dallas Jenkins, the creator of The Chosen, and the director of The Chosen. What is it like for you watching it's not just incredible success, it's monumental success of this series and even the film projects that have come out of it?
Yeah, it's been an incredible ride. And when we think of lightning striking the same family twice in a generation, it just kind of blows us away. I was in my mid-40s when Left Behind hit 28 years ago, and now Dallas is in his mid to late 40s, and this has hit him. He used to be known as Jerry Jenkins' son. I'm now known as Dallas Jenkins' father.
Yeah, it's funny though, because you just brought something up that I planned to ask you about in this interview that, lightning hitting twice, the Left Behind series, your book series, monumental series in the Christian world, sold millions of copies, continues to sell a ton of copies, and really focuses people on prophecy, the end of days. Those novels are incredibly influential. And now you have The Chosen, which is by far the most influential and important, Christian. And I know there's debate about whether or not it's a Christian project, but look, it's a Christian project in terms of what it's presenting. And it is by far the most important of those projects that have been out there. What do you make of that? God using your family in this way two times now?
Well, we're just kind of blown away when Diana and I see Dallas on the screen. We sometimes wonder, was he raised by wolves? We don't remember being that influential in his life. We'd love to take all the credit for this kid. It's just unbelievable, and we feel blessed. I do think it's good that it happened to us both when we were in our 40s and not our 20s. So I'd like to think I wouldn't have got my head turned and that he wouldn't have either, but you don't know. I think maybe God allowed some seasoning and some maturing before he dropped this bomb on both of us. I think we both realized this is a God thing. We need to just get out of the way, hang on for dear life, and do what we're called to do.
Yeah. And, when it comes to, well, let's start with Left Behind, actually, because I have the same question for both projects. When it comes to Left Behind, what do you think it was that made, the initial book, all the subsequent books, they've been made into movies. What do you think made them resonate so deeply with people?
I think it was the great writing. No, I'm kidding. Really, we live in such scary times. I mean, even more so now than then, but even back 28 years ago when the first Left Behind title came out, people were desperate for answers. They were curious about the future. We were 5 years from the end of the millennium. And for some reason, the end of the millennium made people think about the end of times. I'm not sure why. It didn't make me feel that way, but there was definitely a spike in interest there. And people hear about this fiction based on biblical prophecy. And even if they're not believers, if they're just seekers or they're just curious, they're saying, what does the Bible say about the future? What does anybody say about the future? I mean, they're checking Nostradamus and other, people that claim to be clairvoyants and things like that. And I think they were just curious and desperate. And as you say, that series, it's in the 63 million range now, and it's still selling to this day, several thousand units a month. It just blows us away.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, you look at sort of that discussion about prophecy, which again, right now, I would imagine every time something happens in the Middle East or these events happen, people become more interested again and they wonder what's going on and they look back to projects like Left Behind. But now you have The Chosen, and The Chosen is a very different type of project, looking and almost imagining in some ways what these relationships would have looked like between Jesus and his followers. And there's so much there. When you look at this, obviously you have the personal connection into this, but when you look at it and sort of pull back a little bit, what do you think has made The Chosen in a very similar way explode the way that it has?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that we're on two ends of the calendar. I was writing about the future. We don't know when. Now Dallas and his co-writers and I are writing about 2,000 years ago. I've always thought that everything Dallas did was brilliant, but this time I was right. And I think the genius here is this creative imagining, this plausible imagining. We're not sending Jesus in on rockets to other galaxies or crazy things like that. We're simply saying, we believe the Bible, we believe these things are true and that they happened, but they're just snippets. They're just 2 or 3 verses sometimes. The sermons are a little longer, but the miracles sometimes are just a few verses. And so Dallas is saying, what might have happened to lead up to this? Let's make it plausible and believable. Let's not violate the message of the gospel, which is a clear warning in Scripture. But let's just try to enhance this a little. We know, for instance, like in novel 3 that we're talking about today, we know Peter was married because he had a mother-in-law. We don't know his wife's name. We don't know what their relationship was like. But Dallas and his co-writers imagine that, and they allow me to do the same in fiction. And so in this story, she loses a child pre-birth. And both of them, Simon Peter and Eden, we give her a name, are upset with Jesus because they've seen him perform miracles. They've seen him heal people. Why does he not act in their behalf? And that allows me as a reader and a viewer to resonate with that. I can say, hey, I've had my disappointments too. I've had my questions. I've had things I won't know the answer to this side of heaven. That allows us to relate. Instead of these guys, the disciples, being stained glass window figures or statues or old men with gray beards, they're young men, they're blue-collar workers, they're people with flaws just like us. I think it's the relatability that makes it work.
No, absolutely. And that's what makes people, with Left Behind, you have that curiosity and, as you said, the good writing, but that curiosity of what's to come, which is a different animal. Here you have the character building and these people who we know they're real. We know these stories happen. We've read about them so many times, but sort of a different way of looking at maybe what they were going through and then seeing ourselves in their stories. And I know, obviously with these novels, and I love the fact that you've come alongside here with Dallas, and now you're writing these novels. The one that just came out is The Chosen and I Will Give You Rest. And again, this is based on season 3. What is your process though? Because there's obviously a script for the show, the series, progresses, a season comes out. How do you then go about turning that into a novel?
Yeah, it has actually changed since I started doing this. When we did the first one, the first season had already been out. I watched that season. My recollection is I watched it 22 times as I was writing the novel. And I kind of erred the first time because I really mirrored what was on the screen. I don't like books that are, so far from what you see on the screen, you don't understand them. But I wrote it too close. And Dallas and his co-writer said, hey, we want your imagination there. We want you to add value. And so you invent characters too and invent other dialogue and inner monologue. And so that gave me the freedom and I started over. And now I actually do them based on the scripts because we want them to come out closer to the time the show comes out. Now that the script I use may not be the actual shooting script. I mean, it's intended to be, but you know how shooting goes. They change things on a daily basis. And I talked to the writers about this and they said, that's what we like about it. The novels can stand alone. If we go a different direction and you've got something else happening there, that's just added value to the reader. And then what is there, I'm getting gratifying response from viewers who say, I saw that scene, didn't quite understand it, or I missed that line of dialogue and I didn't quite get what they were saying. But in the novel, it's there. And then there's added stuff, as I say. So it's been a fun project, but that's the process now. Is I write these based on the scripts. In fact, I've already finished season 4. And I haven't seen it yet because nobody's seen it yet.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Well, I do know one thing you have seen. You have seen Christmas with The Chosen Holy Night, which, as we are speaking right now, is in theaters. And it's obviously a really unique take. I know there's 2 different projects that were sort of merged together, and it's very different, I think, from what people would expect. But I saw a really nice Facebook post that you put out there about going to see it. Tell us a little bit about your reaction to that.
Yeah, Diana and I wanted to see the very first show. So we went to the noon show here in Colorado Springs yesterday. And, obviously it's a thrill and it's kind of fun to be there because people don't recognize us anymore. I mean, a couple people did, but it's pretty rare. So we're sitting in the back row and, our son comes on the screen and introduces the thing. I mean, you can imagine how that makes you feel. people ask us every day how proud we must be of what Dallas has done. And we say, we're really more proud of who he is than what he's done. But then his wife also did one of the monologues. And, they've been married 25 years. We feel blessed to have her as a daughter-in-law. She's just spectacular. The music was great. They used contemporary Christian acts, music groups, and Andrea Bocelli singing "O Holy Night" just for The Chosen. It was just spectacular. And they merged the pilot, which was the shepherd, the story of the shepherd that gets to witness the nativity, with last year's Christmas special, The Messengers, which is basically Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary talking late in life after Jesus has died, been resurrected, and gone to heaven. Some of the disciples have already been martyred. More are going to be. Very poignant scenes, but they merged those beautifully. Dallas worried that it wouldn't quite work because the first, the pilot was really done on a shoestring budget, and The Messengers was done after the success. But you couldn't tell the difference. I mean, it meshed perfectly, and we were just thrilled. What I said online was that my words have been my cachet for 50 years, but it left me speechless. I just want people to see it.
Well, it's definitely an important thing to see, and I want people to grab your novels too, because those who are Chosen fans, it's another way of looking at the story, right? As you were saying, it's another sort of lens into this. And so again, the latest book is The Chosen, and I Will Give You Rest. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, because both you and Dallas, you're creating projects that point people toward Jesus, and so for you, what is legacy to you at the end of the day when it comes to Left Behind, The Chosen, everything? I mean, you've done over 200 books. So what do you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, I don't want my legacy to be quantity. I mean, people talk about the 200 plus books. The reason for that is that I'm not trying to be falsely modest, but I'm mono gifted. I don't sing or dance or preach. I don't make movies. Dallas does that. I just write, and so I feel obligated to exercise that gift. But what I want the legacy to be, I'm writing about what I'm passionate about. And that is, I want people to know Jesus. And those who know him, I want them to love him more. So we're not substituting for the Bible. We're hopefully pushing people back to the Bible. And that's what we're hearing from people. They're saying, I haven't read the Bible for years, but after watching this or reading this, I want to see those stories again, see which parts are really, from Scripture and which are imagined. But basically, people are just thanking us for bringing them back to their faith. And of course, we're hearing from people who are new to the faith, too. That's what we want the legacy to be.
Well, I appreciate you, as always, coming on, talking with us. Again, the book is The Chosen, and I Will Give You Rest. Thanks so much, Jerry.
Thank you, Billy. Always great to be with you.